Well, yes, indeed, that is what we'll be focusing on today. As you may have seen in that welcoming slide, Professor Pat Utomi joins us now. He's an economist, policy strategist, policy analyst. He's also the founder of Center for Values in Leadership. Good morning, Prof. Thank you for joining us today on the program.
It's a pleasure.
Well, we do know that at the time that they announced the closure of all land borders, there were several reactions from different quarters. So now the committee, they just spoke about that yesterday. 4 of those land borders have been reopened, and then the others, they've given the dates wherein the reopening will occur. What are your immediate impressions about the opening of these 4 at the moment? Okay, so we're going to try and reestablish that. It seems I've lost Prof there. But just as I did put out there, well, you remember at the time, lots of reactions. The LCCI, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, NASI, several economic groups. But, it was actually different strokes for different folks, really, because several people thought, okay, because at that time, they were not too clear concerning the reasons other than the ones which you heard. And so they were a little confusing concerning why. All of them, don't forget, it was all land borders, but the ones, the prominent ones, of course, the economic hub, Lagos, Seme, so lots of things happened through there. Remember, several countries came into the country to try and, have that jaw with that country, to let them see reason why they thought, well, there are certain laws that they thought we were overlooking by insisting on going that route. But as it is now, it appears as though we are just looking to see what to do moving forward.
That law, especially the law as concerning the ECOWAS, free trade agreement and all of that. So, which of course makes a world of sense. When all the borders were closed, part of the reasons given were to check illegal arms proliferation, to check smuggling of rice and other products that are undermining local production in Nigeria, to reduce smuggling of various other things, just as we mentioned, especially rice, which is one of those things and all. But I think a number of things that so many other people have, talked about is, look, there are many things in the value chain. Even if you want to produce within your own borders, you want to produce, from home, there are many, many things to look at. For instance, I remember that back in time, even now, importation of poultry has reduced significantly. But then the poultry farmers themselves, so I'm getting there now. The poultry farmers themselves are saying, okay, well, we can produce more. How about the feeds? Okay, how about the feeds that will help them produce more poultry? So there are certain things or part of their feeds that we don't produce. For instance, we don't produce the vaccines that they give some of these chickens and some of the poultry and all of that. So that's one, is there. So many other things. Well, when one looks at all of the issues, all of the contentious issues around this thing, how significantly have those been dealt with is something that one would really expect the authorities to speak to. Well, hopefully we'll be able to get them one of these days, because when we heard that the borders are going to be reopened, the question we're asking is, arms proliferation, has it reduced? Has it been dealt with? What's the assurance that we're not going to get back there again? Illegal influx of foreigners into Nigeria, is the immigration service now so well kitted that we're not going to go back to that? Illegal proliferation of firearms, customs and all. Are we there now? Are we so standardized that those things are not going to happen again? We're not going to go back to that? Those questions need answering.
Well, let's get back to Prof. He's on the line now. Prof, sorry about that. We're just trying to see how we could get the best of connections via whichever means, but at least we do have something. Well, I need to ask you, what are were your immediate reactions when you learned that these 4 borders have been reopened as announced by the government?
Well, my reaction was about time. I think that the whole policy was wrong-headed from the very beginning. We have been described as a recursive economy because we cannot seem to work consistently down one track. Let me go back a little bit. Back in the 80s, Nigeria's economic development was severely challenged. I mean, sadly, even as recently as 2019, the Forbes article, May 28, 2019, which referred to Nigeria as Africa's money-losing machine, went back to a comparison that I sadly used to make with Venezuela. Back in the 80s, the economy that would look best like was Venezuela is. And bear in mind that Venezuela is sitting on perhaps the biggest crude oil reserve that there is in the world, and yet they are where they are. And that's where we were in 1984, until policies began to loosen up about 86 coming forward. A lot of mistakes were made in the adjustment policies, but it saved us from queuing up on the streets of Nigeria to buy salt and sugar. I mean, a lot of young people may not quite completely understand this, but in the 1980s, we had to set up a company called the National Supply Company just to ensure that we got milk and sugar. And people used to have long queues to buy milk and sugar in Nigeria with all the so-called oil money and all of that. Now, when we began to then loosen up and to look at how to do things differently, Nigeria held its first economic summit, National Economic Summit. I think it was about 1994 when Chivenes Shunekon was head of government. And we had a presentation of scenarios on how Nigeria could travel. And one of the scenarios that came out of a team from the biggest, best-known scenario planning group in the world that I know of at that time, from Shell, was a presentation of between open borders and closed borders. And the conclusion was what everybody hailed as TINA. TINA is there is no alternative. You can choose autarky and punish your people behind your closed walls, or you can look at your comparative advantage and emphasize them in exchange, in trade with other people, and create wealth and create growth in your country and a better life for everybody. It is the most short-sighted thing to rush into an autarkic situation. We saw it fail China for a long time. Albania is a classic example of it, until China got the good fortune of measuring its engagement under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping, and we now have the China that we have today. Now, in our own situation, there is no doubt that there can be challenges with completely open borders if you don't do a few things right. Even as we speak, Paul Krugman, the 2008 Nobel Prize winner in economics, who were those who pushed for open trade and all of that? Recently, in the last few months, Krugman has been known to query whether America fully got the benefit of complete openness under the face of the Trump pushback. And part of my hope is that we'll get Paul Krugman to speak at the next CVL annual lecture on the 5th of February here in Lagos. We're in touch with him, and we want him to reflect on some of the rethinking he's doing around trade. But there is no doubt that prosperity, greater prosperity, has come from trade. And that if we look at issues of our borders being porous and things coming from other destinations and ending up, the rules of origin that are important, we cannot be signing an ACFTA, African Continental Free Trade Agreement, on the one hand, and saying, the only way we can prosper is by closing our borders.
So, Prof, if I could jump in there for a bit,
Yes.
some of those who spoke in support of the land border closure. I mean, we just played the tapes of some of them, including those who deal in those businesses directly, the rice farmers, the poultry farmers, and several others. They say that, look, they had seen improved yields and then the economy was a lot better. So what do we do with those perspectives of theirs concerning why they thought that the closure benefited them?
Pretty fair point. Pretty fair point. What you do is you have targeted industrial policy. Now, in today's structural economics, that is referred to as latent comparative advantage, playing your latent comparative advantage. This means that you look at your factor endowments and you say, we can expect that in 5 years, if we protected this particular industry, not a blanket kind of thing that we did under import substitution industrialization that led us to having permanent infant industries. If we look at our endowment in, say, sesame seeds, and we realize that if we did the needful, within 5 years, we would be globally competitive in the production, processing, and export of sesame seeds, that we can fit into global value chains and dominate those value chains, then we can use industrial policy to ensure that over that 5-year period, we give enough protection to that industry. A blanket closure of your border can only do you more damage. So those people who say it did them good, are we really truly competitive in those areas?
Okay, so Prof,
and we find that we can be competitive, then we can use that industrial policy to support them.
So when you say blanket closure may not do us any good, are you suggesting some form of closure other than the approach that we took initially? And what will they be?
That's the point I'm making, that if there is a particular endowment, if we say rice, let's take rice, the famous rice.
Okay.
We can show that if we did the needful, in 5 years we will be competitive even in exporting rice. Then we can say rice, for 5 years, nothing. And in those 5 years, we must do everything that it takes to become as competitive on rice production and export. Part of the problem that we have had is that people can then hide behind tariff walls, not do the needful, we don't become competitive, and we get the permanent infant industry thing, where people can only make any progress if you give them this barrier that makes you uncompetitive. Then you punish the local consumer who pays much, much, much more for something that he could get cheaper if you did what you can do best and exported those and imported the thing that you are forcing them to buy without making the appropriate investment.
So, Prof,
locally.
because part of the narrative they put out yesterday, which the Daily is even referred to this morning, I mean, the front page of some of them, which we reviewed, did say rice, poultry importation remains banned as these borders are open. So, are we getting it right in that regard?
And let's be sure that the decision is based on our calculating that we can become competitive and not on some pressure group wanting advantage. Because if that is the case, then we are punishing the local consumer in the interest of those people who will never get us to where we should be.
Perhaps another question on that.
If that were the case.
Pardon me, Prof.
If we've done some study and we're convinced.
Yeah, pardon me, Prof. Perhaps the challenge there would be in the capacity of the local producers to be sure that indeed that they can fund or supply enough to sustain our needs. For instance, rice that still remains banned. It's this significant challenge of getting them and the costs as they come in the market. Same goes for poultry. So what do you think needs to be done to ensure that the ban on rice and the ban on the importation of poultry products is significant enough to help the local producers themselves so that they can meet the local demands of the people?
Fantastic question. Because you see, part of the trouble that we have had is the failure of policy in Nigeria to be consistent on anything. the South Korean economist at Cambridge, Jeju Chang, who wrote the book Bad Samaritans, keeps prescribing that approach, which is what works for South Korea that got you to where it became globally competitive. There is some logic to it up to a point. The problem is that we've not been able to have the discipline to do it the way that PAC, for example, did it in South Korea. Now, if you were going to run that policy, it's not that you make some pronouncement, okay, we'll protect the poultry industry for 5 years and blah, 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 and then you go off and you, the minister, your friend wants to smuggle some in, you will, on the side, write him a waiver. Because Nigeria is an economy of waivers because of the indiscipline of the political class. What we must do, if we agree that we can become competitive on this particular track and that it will take us 5 years to so do, is like PAC, as a South Korean president would do in those days, say, okay, who are all the stakeholders in this area? Let's sit down on this table. What will it take for you to become an exporter of poultry from Nigeria 6 years from now? And the poultry farmers will say, we need bank money at no more than 1% interest, for example. Then he will say to the bankers, what will it take for you to give them this money at 1% interest? And the bankers will say, all government money may have to be deposited at 0 interest in our banks to support this. And then he will say to the stakeholders will all agree on what they must do. And they must, in a disciplined way, follow that. It's not that you go and announce tomorrow, central bank is now going to release 20 billion. Hey, everybody claps. And the farmers are saying to you every day, we've not seen one kobo. We've not seen one kobo. Middlemen, politicians will capture the money in between. The problem of Nigeria's economic development is simple. One word: discipline. The leadership of Nigeria has not had the discipline to build an economy. That is the problem.
Well, Prof, there are two policies that you can speak to very, very quickly. How well we are doing with those policies in championing these issues that you have raised. One of them is the Anchor Borrowers Program of the CBN, and the other is the Economic Sustainability Plan, especially the AMBIT, that talks about scaling up agricultural production and all of that. How significant do you see that in dealing with this issue we're talking about?
Let me just put it straight to you. I run an integrated agriculture and agri-industrial town. I'm building one up. I still have not received one kobo from any government or non-government. We're putting literally billions into this. You will get stories. Let me tell you how silly it gets. One bank, a bank I know very well, that my friends said to us, but you see this your location in Edo State, there's a lot of armed robbery around the place. I mean, this is the kind of nonsense you hear from the system. So it's not enough to make announcements. It's not working. Let's be honest, that's not what Korea did. I just explained how PAC worked the process and what made it work in South Korea. So these policies are all announcement policies. It seems that the whole idea is to have an announcement effect because we're not seeing it on ground.
So you don't think that the announcement... My apologies.
Policy analysts.
My apologies, Prof. You don't think that all those claims made by the CBN governor is correct? That, there are poultry farmers that are smiling?
They have made the policy. The question is, did it get to the people? He's not going to go and put it down himself and go and find the people. The governor is my friend. I've talked to him about this several times. I still don't have 1 naira.
Where do you think the problem lies then?
Sorry?
Where do you think the problem lies?
There's too much, I don't know. Nigeria's problem is the triumph of politics. It's too much politics, too much, we keep using this excuse implementation, but that does not wash with me because, as a scholar of the policy process, I can tell you that anything that you pronounce that doesn't get implemented is because you didn't take the problems of implementation into account when you were making the pronouncement. A guy called Jeffrey Pressman wrote a book on this back in the 1980s. Policy implementation is really about dirtying the hands. Who are the people on ground? What are the bottlenecks? How do we debottleneck those things? How do we get those things functioning? That's what the problem is.
Okay. Well, Prof, there is one other dirty in that perhaps need to do here. So some borders have been opened, 4 of them basically. But the major challenge a number of people have posited is the kind of conversation we should have or are not having with the border communities themselves. There is that claim that they aid and abet smuggling and all of that. What kind of communication should we be having with border communities that we may have not heard that will help us to sustain the gains, if any, of the border closure that lasted until yesterday?
You know, again, that is part of the point about policy. When you're making a policy, you have to ask yourself what truly is implementable. Look at the hundreds of thousands of miles of Nigeria's border. In many of those places, they don't actually know that it's a border. The people who live in those communities cross the border 50 times a day without knowing. In fact, their toilets may be in the other country, and their living room is in Nigeria. So policing those borders, you cannot get 100% effectiveness. So you got to look at what are you trying to keep out? What is necessary to aim to keep out? How do those things travel? I tell you, many years ago, I went to Ghana, and it was this kind of season of the year, and there was Hamatan, and my flight could not land Lagos. And I was very anxious to be in Lagos that day for some program the following day. So I hired a car from Accra to start driving to Lagos late in the afternoon. We crossed the border around 10 or 9 p.m. or something similar. I mean, it was like all the trailers in the entire world were heading to Lagos.
Oh dear.
Yes, and within 50 meters of each other, you are at one checkpoint, you are seeing the next checkpoint. So there's total complicity with the authorities. Immigration, customs, they're all complicit.
And Prof, that point you made, I mean, we've talked about this even right from the first day, even up until today. We don't know what measures have been taken for those officials who are supposed to man these borders to ensure these things don't happen. Now we've announced reopening. What's the guarantee that, look, it won't be business as usual if they wanted to prevent anything?
Well, I think we need to probably re-educate our whole system. Look, the average guy who's joining the customs is looking to go, quote-unquote, unfortunately, go and make hay. We need to be able to do a total reorientation program. Look, these are human beings. If they learn enough the damage that these things are doing to their country, the possibilities of their children prospering tomorrow, the short-term thinking of, I collect this bribe, I build 2 houses, maybe we can begin to get a reorientation. It's not it's a joking matter. You can use force. We sack these people. The next one is coming and looking for a fresher way to carry out the same thing. We just got to do a national orientation thing around many of these things. Because in the end, we end up losing. We think we're winning now as individuals, but all of us lose in the end when all this violence all over the place, caused largely by poverty, come upon us. All those things that we have stolen or taken from bribe comes back to haunt all of us. So I don't know what the national orientation, Dr. Garba Barry is a nice guy, but I don't know how much they are doing. Our country needs a total reorientation. If you tell me that, because my friend Hamid Ali is making noise, that the customs troops are working a different work, he's deceiving himself. Half of the guys who applied to go and make hay.
Wow.
You don't fire this guy, fire that guy if you can even, and everything is right. No, we need a total, inside-out cleanup of educating people, running continuous development programs for them, leadership training, and all of that, to understand really their mission.
Yeah. Well, Prof, we
make those small connects. They're going to go down in circles.
We appreciate your time and your perspectives on the program this morning. Always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for talking to us this morning, Prof.
Great pleasure, Chamberlain.
Okay, well, yes, you may have heard about that directive by the federal government that telcos have got to disconnect your line, your SIM line, if you don't get, if you don't supply your NIN by the 30th of this month. Well, the thing is, yes, the National Assembly, I think they weighed in on this matter, asking for some extension, as it were, but those are the matters up for consideration this morning. And we do have persons who are relevant to speak on the subject matter. Chief Delu Ogunbanjo is the president of NATCOM. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, this is not the first in the series. This is, of course, another in the series of these directives of trying to get SIM or some form of registration, identification, synchronization. It keeps coming on. Who knows what next? But this particular one, yay or nay?
Nay.
Why not?
Thank you very much. The nay has some connotations in the sense that, for instance, well, fortunately, the National Assembly had come in to say that, sorry, we may be looking at 10 weeks. Initially, the minister ordered that it should be 2 weeks, meaning it's going to end, I think, December 30 or December 31. But swiftly, the National Assembly is now saying, let's do 10 weeks, meaning maybe end of February.
But they haven't acceded to that yet.
Well, it's still a resolution, so to say. So, yeah. And basically, that is what we are looking at right now. But if you look at the last SIM registration exercise, again, it was contracted to about 7 companies, i.e., I know JKK, JAMS, and all those people. 1 per geopolitical zone. And it took, initially they said 6 months, but all in all, came to about 2 years at that time. Unfortunately, one network operator got some shockers, he was fined and all that. Still because of this SIM stuff. But right now, we are now saying, the minister is now saying, we must register. Perhaps, I know where they're coming from. The 4 means of identification, international passport, driver's license, voter's card, and NIN. The other 3 can be cloned, can be faked, but NIN is the one that can never be faked. It's real. You can't fake that, you can't clone it. So I understand the concerns of the minister and the NCC. But beyond that are the people who are going to register. Now we have a lot of things going on. COVID is here. By that announcement alone, you will send a lot of people to NIN registration centers, and that means head over heels.
Speaking about that, we do remember there was a time that they required that for JAM. There was a lot of hoopla about it. It went back and forth, and then they had to sheath the sword on that. Precisely. But we do have a background report on the circumstances concerning how you need to get your national identity number. Have a look.
This was the atmosphere at the Lagos office of the National Identity Management Commission months ago when the Joint Admission Matriculation Board made NIN a compulsory registration requirement. And when the news of the new directive broke that all SIM cards without NIN will be blocked from mobile networks after a stipulated time, many already dreaded the return of the hectic days at the National Identity Management Office. Today the mood is different, less chaotic, but anxious applicants sit under a tent waiting to be called in. Officials of NIMC says the process has been simplified and the days of overwhelming crowd are over.
We have about 173 agents that will be involved in data capturing. Not only that, we have small, medium scale enterprises that can also capture. We have public institutions, just like we have the state governments too, like in Lagos State, we have Ogun State, we have in Delta, we have in Abia, we have Adamawa State governments that have also been licensed to do this data capturing.
But there are other arguments.
There's a large percentage of population that have BVN. I'm wondering, what would it take to sync that, or for the government to have access? I mean, there's biometrics in there, it has all your date of birth, has your mother's maiden name. What does a lot of information that on a good day, if we're looking at privacy, like why does the government need that from me?
Regardless of what the international passport carries or the driver's license carries, let's just trust that this is an opportunity for them to restructure everything and make sure that everything they have for every individual is correct.
Nigeria has a total active telephone subscription of almost 200 million, and the federal government is hoping to audit the database to checkmate the lingering security challenges in the country, among other issues. The NCC says there's a need for a drastic measure to build a credible national database and as well improve the integrity of the SIM card registration process, a move some consider plausible but poorly implemented. Dari Idowu, Channels Television News.
Wow, so there you go on that one. But let's bring in Mr. Gbenga Adebayo, who is the President, Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria. He joins us virtually this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. What kind of consideration are telcos given this directive by the NCC and the ministry too?
Thank you. We are working with all the stakeholders in ensuring that we ramp up the number and do so very quickly. We have been told by NIMSI that on their database they have about 40 million Nigerians captured already. We are now looking at how to have some of system integration where we can either pull directly those numbers from their database or have subscribers upload these numbers into their own database. We're looking at how best we can make it as seamless as possible for subscribers. We're not unaware about the anxiety around this. We're not unaware about the pressure for time. But being a digital industry, we are doing all that we can to make it as easy and as simple as possible for subscribers to have this information uploaded into an NIMSI database. We have been on it for a while. We had received as an industry last year from from the NCC, a directive to have NIN number integrated into the SIM card database. We saw the pressure for time. We sought for an extension of time. That was extended to sometime December this year. We went back to them mid-year, looking at the numbers, the corresponding uptake from NIMSI. And we sought for an extension until about middle of next year. But due to exigencies of time, and the minister in his wisdom felt that we can do it much quicker than the length of time. So we are now doing all that we can to ensure that this is achieved. And beyond that is that we can't have a country where you don't have a credible national database. And somebody has to make it happen. And we must commend the government and the minister at this time for having the political will to push this. We are doing all that we can, and we will see where we are in the next couple of days. Now the minister has set up a steering committee comprising of the CEOs of the major telcos, the minister is the chairman, DG of NIMSI is there, ABC of NCC also on that steering committee. And we are meeting on a regular basis to ensure that we do peer review to see where things are. And by about this time next week, we'll see where things are. And I'm sure that at the appropriate time, the right information will be provided to government.
It'd be fair then to say that the telcos are okay with this timeline given by the ministry. What number of subscribers are you looking to register in that 2 weeks?
We do have license obligation to the government. If this is what government wants, that's what we have to do. And we have to be seen as putting the best foot forward in this regard. And so whether we are comfortable with it or not, we're at work. We are working, we're at work. Systems and interfaces are being modified. New applications are being tested and tried now. And we need to put our best foot forward, and we review where we are in a matter of days. So we can't say we are comfortable or we are not comfortable. But the fact is that we subscribe to the fact that government acts that we must have a credible national database. And as an industry, we are doing all that we can to support government in that regard to make sure that it happens. Now, whether it happens within a period of 2 weeks or not, at least we all have to be seen as putting the best foot forward to make sure that this national objective is realized.
So many issues to raise with telcos, but let me come back in the meantime to Mr. Umbajo. Now, this is not the first time we're hearing this. This is not the first time government is saying that, we need to clean up the database of especially telcos. And it's come up over and over again. What is the challenge that, in your opinion, subscribers have with getting this done? Because a good number of people will remember that they have had to register and re-register their SIMs a good number of times, some 2-3 times within the past 2-3 years. So what is the challenge here that, would say, okay, I want to get a new SIM from the same telecom service provider. And when I get there, I have to start the registration of my previous SIM from the scratch. In your opinion, what's the challenge?
Thank you very much. You see, the challenge has been, for instance, I did say that earlier, you have 4 means of identification that is accepted by government. Driver's license, voter's card, NIN, and what's the last one? There are 4 of them now. They accept any of the 4. But now, the minister and the NCC, they are saying it has to be NIN, which is good for security purposes. Everybody will be captured because that is the National Identity Management Commission's portal. Everybody will be there. Only 2 weeks ago, I lost my phone. And I went to, the network operator's office, and I have the NIMC slip I was given. And she said I could use my driving license. And just 2 weeks ago, because I lost my phone, some robbers took my phone. So there you are, she demanded for one of them, only to be called yesterday by the same network operator that, sorry, I need to, do the thing again. But you are the one that said they were sorry and all that. So they are now tying it only to one of the means of identification, which is NIN, National Identity.
No. My question, Mr. Umbajo, is, over time, people have had to re-register on their SIM, with the same SIM, more than once.
If you lose it.
If, for whatever reason. Okay. Even those who didn't lose their SIMs, they are told that they needed to come and re-register or update their data and all of that. I'm looking at the challenge of, the telecom subscriber who doesn't have that luxury of time to be going from time to time to the telecom service provider to register or re-register or update data. Shouldn't there be some form of, updated technology to help, the subscribers find it easier?
Well, usually when you get such SMSs from the network operators, they tell you if you have registered, ignore. It's only when you lose your SIM, you lose your phone and your SIM goes with it. They want to confirm that you are still the one. Some of the network operators will tell you, go and do affidavit, court affidavit, sworn affidavit. Some don't, but some of them do demand that. So they just want to be sure, in view of the experience one of the operators has had with NCC through regulation. So I will say that happens once you have registered before. You don't have to bother again until you lose your SIM.
In the event of any loss of a SIM. Let me go back to Mr. Adebayo now. Last year, I think it was April, there was that report out there that the NCC recorded 95.7 million invalid SIM registration as at last year. And the operators, of course, the telcos, would do what they needed to do to ensure that they got as many people on their platforms as possible. Now, that has happened over time. And then that announcement from the National Assembly, that alarm or alert from the National Assembly that, look, we still have a good number of unregulated SIM cards, for which reason we are vulnerable, security-wise. How did we get to this point, especially of what Mr. Gumbanjo has just raised, such that telecom service providers themselves don't even have that information percolated down adequately to their people in order to be able to do the needful as and when due?
Well, let me say clearly that there are no cases of re-registration. There are cases of registration and revalidation of registration. And that's that in the data that was captured in the first instance, you could have a situation where one of the fields is not properly completed. It could be due to inadequacy of information provided by the subscriber or due to improper capture. And in this regard, you have cases where people are asked to come back to revalidate their SIM registration. It's not like we did registration twice or thrice, as the case may be. And in the directive that the NCC has given, even in this regard, they have said to us that they want to audit the exercise. And that means that we've done something which is being considered credible and good enough. But they need to do an audit just to be assured that the integrity of that data is right. Let me also say that other than telecom sector, I'm not aware of very many sectors in the country today where we have such a large database. And I'm not aware of many that we have such credible database where at least you know who is where and what they are doing, so to say. That said, we need to be sure that the integrity of this information is right. And that's why the regulator in his wisdom has come to say, let us do an audit of this exercise. Let's pause, let's pull the stops for 2 weeks. Let's see where we are so that we can at least be bold and proud about the integrity of the data that we have captured. Now, on the issue of identification required for SIM registration, when we had the protocol for SIM registration in terms of requirement provided by the NCC, we were told to capture certain information. We are also told to demand for some form of national ID. It could be driver's license, could be passport photograph and all that. But I don't want to say that you also know that a number of people do not have any of this information. Or in some cases, when they have, this could be subject to some authenticity test and all of that. Now, government has come to say the most reliable and credible that they want to happen to use is the NIN number. And that's the way we are going. And this actually shows some movement and some improvement in our entire national ecosystem. Because with the NIN number, you can find and identify everybody. And I think we should not look at the problems. We should look more at the benefit than the problem I share with this. You see, it's very typical of us that when we have to do something that will take us out of our comfort zone, we all feel very uncomfortable. For that reason, many Nigerians don't have voters card, because while in the day of registration, it's either rainy or it's too sunny, and they just feel that they don't want to be discomforted. But it's easy for people to sit behind the comfort of their smartphone and their digital devices and criticize. But when it's time for call to action, we know the attitude of quite a number of Nigerians.
Well, the challenge here, Mr. Adeboye, just one moment on that. Yeah. The challenge is not, whether or not we do it, whether or not people are picking holes. The challenge is trying to ensure that we don't do it again. What you call revalidation, as far as the average, person is concerned, is re-registration, because he has to go back to the same, subscribers organization, to the same providers organization, to do pretty much the same thing, or at least validate the information that he has to be there physically. So that's essentially what this is all about.
Now we are taking one step that we ensure that doesn't happen. As you do know, the NIN number is connected to everything. It's connected to your BVN, it's connected to your driver's license. Now you can't even obtain a national passport without this BVN,
absolutely,
NIN and all of that. So we are now going towards having one national database, and that's what is important. And that is the benefit we all must focus on instead of the problem associated with that.
Okay, well, the challenge that people will need to face is the process. You have seen from that report that we showed you that a number of people have gone physically to the NIN office and all of that to try to get the NIMC office to try to get their NIN. In the involvement of your members, who are part of 173, agents that government has selected for this, What do the subscribers have to do to update their information?
Well, again, that's something for which we must commend government. I was at the stakeholder meeting last Monday with the Honorable Minister where these issues were discussed. And again, we must commend the Minister for this initiative and for having the political will to make this happen. And at that meeting was also the DG of NIMSI, was also all of us, the CEOs of major operating companies. And it was agreed at the meeting that a number of outlets that are currently used for SIM registration will be upgraded to ensure that they are also able to do data capture. So in that regard, the problems of the past, which you saw in the report that was made, that you heard just shortly before this interview, the problem of access to capture centers will be minimized. In essence, other than licensing 170 new people to do this data capture, you will now have access to, operators will now be able to capture this data, which was the decision that was made at the meeting on Monday. So we think that more access will be provided, and the more the access, the easier to be for people. We're also looking at digital applications, which can make it easy for this data capture. It will not eliminate people having to be there physically, because they need to capture their fingerprint and need to capture their facial. But at least in terms of access and crowd management, this will make things a lot easier for people. And do not forget, I had said earlier that NIMSI had confirmed to us that they do have over 40 million people on their database. Number of my subscribers do have more than one SIM card. So if you extrapolate that to say, let's say 40 million people with an average of 2 SIM cards per person, we're already looking at a number in the range of 80 million thereabout, which can already be uploaded onto the database as of now. So we are working, we are doing all that we can. Applications are being developed over the night, and a number of subscribers receive text messages from their providers asking them to upload their name in certain ways. Even NIMSI itself has set now a protocol for how to upload your name number onto your subscriber database and all that. And so it's a lot of effort that is going on. We are focused on the end result and not on the problem. We are not unmindful about the problems of subscribers, and we are doing all that we can to ensure that we minimize the discomfort on people. We just need to appeal to people for patience. We need to appeal to people to look at the greater good. For reasons of the greater good as a country, that we must have credible national database. For the benefit of all of us, I think we should join hands together to ensure that this happens, and this happens this time around.
Well, Chief, patience is required here.
Absolutely.
Patience comes with time. This is a 2 weeks ultimatum given by the minister. The National Assembly is looking at 10 weeks. It can never be enough. They've just registered 40 million. We are about between 160 and 200 million. And we have about 212 million subscribers. How do you want 173? Grossly inadequate. We need a minimum of 6 months.
But he doesn't seem to think so.
He must think so. The last one took more than 2 years.
But Mr. Adebayo, from his experience, this is something that Nigerians have grappled with over time, but you are giving that assurance that in 2 weeks this can be done.
We are not focusing on the problems. We are focusing on the end results, and we are doing all that we can. As I said, a steering committee has been considered. We are serving on this committee at a very high level committee, and we are looking at the progress made on daily basis. And rightly so, at the appropriate time, we'll provide information to the regulator on where we are, and the right decisions will be made. If we look at impossibility, it will never happen. But we must agree that, yes, we can do it, and then we go for it all the way. So we are not focusing on the problem as an industry. We are focusing on the end result. We must get there someday, and the time to start is now. So I'm not committing to 2 weeks. Yes, it's not a problem. Yes, it's a problem. No, we're not looking at that. We are looking at what are the things that we need to do to ensure that the numbers are achieved, which will be done in 10 days, will be done in 5 days, will be done in 2 weeks, will be done in 10 weeks. Let's get to work. And that's what we are doing. We must continue to educate people on the need for us to have a credible national database. And really and truly, NIMSI has done very well under the circumstances to cover the country of this size, with this number of population, to have captured up to 40 million.
Not a lot of people will agree with you on that one when you move over from the TELCOS to NIMSI, because they have huge challenges, but which some of them hope that will be solved. Yes, we understand that we need to focus on the solutions, but it's a problem that needs to be solved as well. So you need to see the problem for which you want to provide the
I
solution
see
for.
the problem. I see the problem, but I'm not focusing on the problem.
Okay, just give us a couple of minutes. We'll be back and let you both conclude your thoughts in just a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. It's our concluding moments now with both gentlemen. Chief Adebanjo, let me ask you, why do you think these 2 weeks will be insufficient?
Thank you very much. It's a germane question. If the last SIM registration exercise with 7 operators, 1 from each geopolitical zone, and with several numbers of young people that they engaged then, maybe 1,000 per geopolitical zone, each, if not more. There were so many. We couldn't finish it in 6 months that they initially, said you should finish. It took almost 2 years. Now, with only 173, and we are still going about 160 million people more.
But don't forget, Mr. Adebanjo, Mr. Ngbayo, that the telcos already have experience centers all over the nation, and then there are state governments who are also involved in the process.
Because it is SIM registration, you will now have a lot of people bombarding the centers, and this is another place you can get COVID easily. Government must think about that as well. We are now talking about second wave of COVID. Now, NIPSI centers will be crowded. How many experience centers do they have? All in all, is it up to 1,000 nationwide? Maybe 5,000 nationwide. It is grossly inadequate. Minimum requirement is to do this is 6 months, minimum.
But Mr. Adebayo, what specific app are you aware if most of these telcos have developed any app whatsoever? Because a lot of the people in different networks who we've spoken to say they've not received any of such apps, other than the fact that they may have to either go to those centers, which, of course, it comes with its associated problems.
Okay, I was trying to finish my earlier submission before the break, and I'd just like to quickly conclude on that. And that's that NIMSI said they have 40 million subscribers on their database. We are farming to this. We think they've done well as NIMSI alone to have done that much in the intervening period. Now they are being joined by 173 other companies, including the major network operators who do have experience and point of presence across the country. So we think this is something to farm into. The other thing is that I can't say to you that it's an easy project. No, it's not easy. It's going to be tough. It's going to be difficult. But we must look at the positive side. It's something that has to be done. And we must do all that we can to make it happen. On the issue of apps, I'm aware that a number of operator members do have apps that are now being tested. Some are already working. Overnight, we got some trial messages from a few of them. And in the next couple of days, you will begin to see more information going around on how best you can upload this, particularly those that are already in the within the 40 million bracket, how they can upload their NIN number with ease. So I can't say to you that it's just a walk in the way. No, it's not going to be easy. It's a Herculean task. But like any other national project, because of our size and population and landmass, it will be difficult, it will be tough. But if there is a will, there is always a way. And that's why we're all pulling together as an industry, as the registration agents, and also as NIMSI, as NCC, supervised by the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy. We're all pulling together now. Now, on the same rate, we were just one industry that did it. Now we have people, not just this industry and this sector, we also have government agencies participating in this now. So we think that the journey, if we all look at the positive side, will be difficult, but it will be possible. And in that regard, while I'm not looking at the specific duration of time, whether it will be in 10 days, in 2 weeks, in 6 months, or more than that, we are only saying we must put our best foot forward now. We must consider national interest above other consideration. We do have obligation to government, to work with government to make sure this happens. And that's our appeal to subscribers. So please understand that we should all look at the positive side and assist government in making this happen with ease, instead of focusing on what the problems are. So I'm not saying to you that it's a walk in the park. No, certainly not. It's a Herculean task, and it's going to be difficult and tough. But we've done it before, and we can do it again.
Are the telcos and other agencies involved, the private sector participants in this project, including your members, are they getting incentivized in any way by government for this service?
Those are now details that we are working with the steering committee. Those are details that we are working at. But I also must say that the minister has directed that the access verification code for verifying NIMC number on any network should be 0 rated. So anyone who is calling that number now to verify their NIN number will not be charged for that service. And there are lots of things in the works at this time. Over the next days, we will begin to see some movement and some traction on this. But our appeal to government and also to all of our friends and partners in the media is to assist us in sending the positive message. We need to do this for the reasons of national interest. And we all must put together to make it happen. We can't have a country of this size, of this population, without the credible national identity database. It's not possible.
Mr. Adebayo, when you say you've done it before and you can do it again, what exactly are you referring to that was done in 2 weeks?
No, I didn't say 2 weeks. I said we've done it because we did SIMREX.
No, this deadline is 2 weeks. No, this deadline will elapse at the end of this month. That's about 2 weeks.
I mean, we couldn't have done, we didn't do our SIM card registration in 2 weeks. We didn't do that in 2 weeks. So government minister has said, go and do it within 2 weeks. So go to work and come back to me with a report on where you are, and we will see where we are. We have the steering committee that's meeting, looking at the progress, and these numbers will speak for themselves. So I'm not going to scare anyone to say that 2 weeks' time you will not have phone to work. And I won't scare anyone with that, but I will say that as people who are at work and working with all agencies of government, we will see where we are, and the right information will be provided to government.
Okay, well, as we wind down, just to put out that, it's not that we're trying to discourage anyone or saying this is not going to be possible. Even the National Assembly themselves say 2 weeks will be grossly inadequate. They all have the interest of the country at heart. So that is what we're saying. We're not saying it can't be done, but the thing is, they say 2 weeks may not just be enough, because we will come back here in the third week if they don't accede to the demands of the National Assembly, and we wonder why not, and still talking about the same things. So it's a question of the timing,
the 2 weeks
the
mandate,
duration.
2 weeks mandate has been given. We're at work on this. The committee is meeting. We are working with all the telcos. We are doing daily review about the progress made, and we will provide the right information to government. So minister has said 2 weeks. Okay, we couldn't respond to minister to say it is impossible without going to work. So we are working now, developing systems and applications to see what can happen in 2 weeks. And at the appropriate time, we will provide information to government, and government will decide as best for the country.
In other words, can one say that the government relied on the telcos' advice, saying that 2 weeks is sufficient, they can deliver in 2 weeks?
We never advised government. The government directed that we need to ensure that this happens within 2 weeks. And as responsible corporate citizens, we have said we are going to go home, get to work, and we will come back to you. That was where we left it.
What do you think?
Well, you see, I'm worried about, for now, everybody who is a patriotic Nigerian must support this. We're all in support. We need to have, since all these years, we need to have, a correct database. Fine. Reliable database, that's the word. However, 2 weeks, by the time it starts, and we are looking at so many other people that are still to be registered, the number of centers are grossly inadequate, the timeline is inadequate, it's unfortunate. You will, if they don't want COVID-19 to spread again, because it will be very tough to do physical distancing or the non-pharmaceutical protocols, are those centers, by the time the pressure comes on them. 6 months is it.
I guess they have a lot of solutions in the offing, but that's where we have to let it go. We have to thank both of you for coming on. Chief Deolu Ogunbanjo is the president of NATCOM. We also have had Mr. Gbenga Adebayo, president of the Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria. Gentlemen, thank you both for talking to us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, and so that was a book launch. that occurred some time ago of the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, and there were some comments that, of course, naturally, the attendant comments concerning what transpired at that time, who said what, and how the events play out. So some things about the backstory did occur. So we do have Dr. Oke Ikechukwu, who is the Executive Director, Development Specs Academy, who joins us from Abuja to weigh in on this matter. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, you've read a lot of those comments associated with what transpired at the time. I think one of the ones that featured prominent in the dailies was that of the former emir of Kano, where the governor of Kano, Governor Ganduje, was speaking about why he was appointed to spy certain people and what he had to do moving forward. How did you internalize those submissions?
I think we should work within reason and logic, especially in a technologically challenged nation like ours. 2 weeks is grossly inadequate and totally unrealistic for the SIM-NIM integration registration. So it's not a matter of saying that you got a directive to the minister. People who, particularly in the public sector, should have the courage to advise people in private sector. In the public, it's not sufficient. A minister did not descend from the moon. He's here in Nigeria. If he goes to his village to register his own cousins, how long will it take? Yes, they are developing an app. There's nothing wrong with that. But how many people within our population of nearly 200 million are ICT savvy? So let's not let a good idea get drawn into a very irritating controversy because of wrong timing. It is wrong to assume it will work in 2 weeks, even if you decide to register only lawmakers in Nigeria and people in the university who are presumably educated. So let's not just begin to generate a lot of heat. People should know that appointments are for public service, not for proclamation of imperial decrees. It should be quickly announced that 2 weeks is not enough, that they've reviewed it, and that they're going to make sure this happens in the first instance within 6 months.
Just one moment,
it will awaken confidence.
Yes, just one moment,
we are deviating from the topic.
Exactly. Because
so on the book.
That must be a serious matter.
Well, of course, first of all, there have been so many reactions. Of course, you've heard that of the governor of Kano State, who was saying that, look, he did what he did to the emir of Kano at the time. One of the very rare events that, things that anyone would do because of, President Jonathan. So many other people, apologizing, re-strategizing, refocusing, and all of that. What's your take?
My take is simple. Any book, particularly a biography, will always be controversial because it involves about 3 things. Opinions expressed based on interest, that is, as your own partiality sways you to express an opinion. Opinion expressed because you witnessed it, and in your view, this is quite objective. And also a third leg, which is often the most reliable. Evaluation of various opinions to see where there's consensus. A book has been written about Jonathan's tenure. This is not the first. It's only natural that some people will hold different positions on it. It's also only natural that many principal actors, while he was president, will now be able to look back at some of the things they did, try to justify themselves, feel embarrassed by some of it. In fact, the revelations will also enable them to understand some things they didn't know about others with whom they were acting. So my first main submission in response to your question is that it is natural that this kind of controversy should erupt. Secondly, books like this and the revelations they contain actually belong to what you might call the ingredients used for national development. As nations evolve, people play roles. As they play those roles, you begin to see what people really are within themselves and what they are officially. That is part of what this book has brought out. So I'm not surprised at the reactions at all. The first book that came out on him, you saw what happened. Yes, he explained how he what made him make the phone call and how he made the phone call. What he said in the book was contrary to what Osita Chidoka said. It was contrary to what Okonjo-Iweala said. It was contrary to what Adoke, his Attorney General, said. So the book is first of all the agglomeration of opinions about his tenure and his person and the actions and activities that took place at that time. And all of these things I've mentioned are totally different, are subject to totally different interpretations and perceptions. And this reaction is good.
Well, those contrary opinions, one way or another, they have a way of influencing ultimately the position of different other people who will read up on those opinions. For instance, take the opinion of the comment of the governor of Kano State at that event, where he said that that the emir of Kano was installed in office for the reason of spiting the person on whom the book was written about, and so many other things like that. Those kinds of opinion, how helpful are they about the book and about the person in history?
They are very helpful because if you will dare to write a book and bring it out, you're putting your opinion on ink. Now, to say because you're launching it, my own opinion, which is not on ink, should not be put up using a microphone, you're deceiving yourself. You shouldn't have written the book in the first place. So Ganduje has every right to say what he thinks. He also has a right, using such a platform, which is to discuss opinions about the tenure of somebody who was president. If there were activities or events during the period to which he was privy, are you saying he has no right to say anything about it, particularly also being a public office holder? So I think it's perfectly in order. If there were even worse opinions, that's a place to table them. They are not children. They went to write the book, and you've now written the book. And what I think about some of what you said, you think I shouldn't say it? No, I have a right. So even the perception, the submission of a Ganduje, the crowning of the emir was to inspire. It was a general perception during Jonathan's tenure that Sanusi became emir. In fact, in some quarters, it was described as a reward for the damage done to the image of that government in some controversies pertaining to the central bank. But those, in my view, were rumors. If indeed they are true, it doesn't remove if they are true, it doesn't remove the fact that it was said. If they are false, it doesn't remove the fact that people have also been influenced by it. So are we complaining that Ganduje said something abominable? Or are we complaining that Ganduje said something which had been said for many years and which in fact made a lot of people, hold Sanusi to some extent in contempt? Finally, on the question of what Ganduje said, does he remove the fact that Sanusi was a very brilliant banker and that did very well in public office and that he's an intelligent man? Does he remove the fact that Sanusi was, as emir, interested in the welfare of women and the poor, etc.? So these people should not be afraid of controversies. If you're not interested, if you're not ready to receive a punch, don't go into professional boxing. They wrote a book and brought it out. Why should Ganduje not speak? Why should any other person not speak? Why should somebody even not take up his pen and do a counter narrative of the whole book? So this is robust engagement. It's good for our democracy.
Well, Doctor, permit me to deviate for a little bit, but, still on the subject matter. There's something you said the other time that, spurred this in my mind. You said, the earlier book that President Jonathan wrote, that there were divergent opinions about, some of the things that he said.
Some aspects of what's in it.
Some aspects. You quoted what Osita Chidoke said. You quoted what Dr. Okonjo-Iweala also said. It just raised in my mind the fundamental of historical documentation. If certain historical facts are not in alignment with each other, it makes it difficult to know whose history or what history to believe as the authentic one. How do you respond to that?
That is correct. It's quite simple. Even Herodotus, the Greek man whom the world regards as the father of philosophy, history. He said there are 3 methods of writing history: based on memory, based on engagement, but those are academic, but they are useful. Every event is perceived differently by all the people who watch that event. Every government is interpreted differently by people depending on 3 things: whether or not they played a role in that government, whether or not they like that government, and whether or not they are objective, irrespective of whether or not they like the government. Since that is true, it's possible to have people who will always tell lies, concoct everything to defend what is going on, no matter how absurd. If you ask them to write history, they will write you, they will tell you we're in heaven once because they're involved. Then you also have those who don't like, who may then not like the government, and if you ask them to write, they will give the extreme opposite view. They will ignore the good points in that government, they will ignore the achievements, they will paper over everything good just to make them look bad. They are not objective also. Then you also have those who look at a government, admit the challenges, point out disastrous indications of poor performance where necessary, point out the good pillars they've put in place, which, if built upon, can sustain society. And so that would be the kind of report that you could call authentic history. But world history has never been authentic. And so if you're a child and you're brought up in Africa and you study African history, development from the 18th century, you will find out that Mungo Park discovered River Niger. River Niger, where our ancestors had been living for thousands of years, Mungo Park came out to discover it, and that's when it came into existence, and so many other things. So history becomes disruptive. Official history becomes disruptive of the people's evolution when it is made up of narratives that do not contain the substance of the people. That's part of what we're experiencing. So in the matter of Jonathan's book, there is nothing unusual in that. All kinds of lies will be in it. All kinds of factual statements will be in it. It will, in fact, you will find on reading closely that it's what I usually classify under incestuous communication, where the communicator is the one assessing and applauding content. How many people who read the last one that was published? This book is supposed to aid the growth of our people and our nation. Political science students are supposed to have it. But we've evolved a culture of launching a book, calling big men and women together, and then everybody will clap, they make fine speeches. Nobody sees the book again or hears about it. Where are all the books written about military governors in the 16 years of military rule and former people? These are materials for national development, but they are treated as fundraising documents and occasions to appear for political networking. No, there's nothing. It will always be subjective. You can't call police on this matter, my brother.
Yes, indeed. I don't plan to call anyone. I'll always find place to let it go. And that analogy you gave about the boxing ring, lots of people are now trying to remind me of how much Anthony Joshua earned just a couple of weeks ago. And then if only they want to go try their luck. But always a pleasure to have you on, Dr.
They better not.
Well, thank you very much. We're back in a moment, everyone. Wait a minute. I think we'll have some feedback already, so we might as well just jump right into some of them.
Let me take the first one by Torilope Lanira, who was talking about SIM and NIN registration. The government is asking that we link NIN to our SIM cards, which is good. However, the government is silent on how our data will be protected and used. That's data security and governance, considering that our SIM cards are linked to our BVN. Good point, actually. It's my bank account.
Whoa. So wait.
No, read the next one.
Are you asking people to rush? Yes, national, what was that word? National interest and everything. But so if you rush...
Personal security.
Your BVN is tied to that. Oh, my goodness. Well, Tunde says, hope the hidden reason behind this NIN SIM registration is not a trick to raise money. Which one is 20 naira NIN retrieval? Why 20 naira and not 4 naira? 180 million SIMs by 20 naira, 3.6 billion.
Well, let's correct that. It's not for SIM or NIN registration. It's for you if you want this voluntary, if you want to confirm the status of your SIM card, if it's already connected to your name, that's just a...
Yeah, but he says, why 20 naira? Why not 4 naira? Why are they not thinking about national interest and national people's pockets?
As opposed to personal interests. Okay. Well, this one is from Akinyola Alonge about data bank. Why should national ID expire when I'm still alive?
Good point.
Before I got my national ID, 1 year had gone out of its validity. A simple measure of data from banks and other agencies will solve this problem. I just registered last year. Well, the card may expire. Well, of course, we hope we'll get more information, but I think your social security number does not expire.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
it's just a card.
There was a shopping cart that I had to put money into, one of these several shops. And so after a while, I went to use it. They said, no, you haven't used this for a while. It has expired. I said, you guys must be crazy. Does Naira expire? Money is in the car. You're telling me the money is expired? I thought, oh, come on, guys. Don't let us raise something else here. But this one from Tony Ajiri says, my worry on the minister's pronouncement is that most rural dwellers are not yet enrolled with NIMC. How are they going to get their NIN?
Another very, very good question. Smartphones versus dumb phones. And still on the same SIM registration, always putting the horse before the cart. Well, that's a good way to do it, actually. The government, working with the telcos, should have put in place a seamless digital way rather than issuing an ultimatum first. That's from Adeyemi Yusuf.
Well, some are even thinking, look, one of the smart things the government could have done is to grant telcos the rights to act as NIMC registration agents, and that will, create a lot of value chain, one-stop shops.
Absolutely, which is what this means, actually, but a lot of education needs to go into it. Let's just hope that NIMC or even NCC or the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy will come out shortly to talk.
So guys, wherever you are, let us know your experience about what you've seen or tried, whichever platform. Hey, it will be nice to put the feedback out there. If they say 2 weeks will be enough. So we will see. Well, there you go. That is the show today. We thank you all for watching. We always love being here for you. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain.
And please do keep safe. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.